I am so excited that you guys said yes, that you would come do this for me. So I had asked my parents, this is my dad Dennis, and my mother Rosemary, and I had asked them if they would come and let me interview them. So we are gonna do my dad's interview now, and I really want to do a tribute to him for being an amazing father, an amazing husband, for being a role model, and I don't think that I could have asked for any better father in my life. Like if somebody had lined up all these fathers in the world and said, choose which one's yours, I would pick him over and over again every single time.
Boy, she sure made a mistake, didn't she?
Definitely didn't make a mistake. Didn't make a mistake at all. So I have some questions I put together to ask him, and I wanted to record this so I would have this for the rest of my life, so my children, my grandchildren, and on would have it too, and I want to share this with you as well so you can see what an amazing person he is. Now I just set that bar this high for him. He's like, thanks.
And you want me to say something now?
Right, right. So first, Dad, what is your favorite childhood memory?
You know, I read that question and thought, there's so many of them. I don't know what my favorite is. I mean, you know, there was riding horses with my Uncle David, and just the smell of the sagebrush, the smell of the leather in the saddle. Mm-hmm. Right now, I go into a hardware store where they sell saddles, and I just said, oh, that smells good. You know,
Memories.
There was that. There was going for rides with my family. I remember we would drive up to the main road in Cache Valley, and a couple of times we would toss a coin. Right, and then we'd go up to Yellowstone. Left, we'd go to California, and that was our week's vacation coming up. I mean, it was that. A lot of times there was that much planning that went into our family. Just so it was. That was interesting. Seeing the snowdrifts higher than the car. And even being out and shoveling the snow was, because when we finished, we would be down at my mother's aunt's, and there was always a big plate of apple skeevers and butter and, you know, all kinds of good things to put on them, and hot chocolate drink. So that was great. Mom and Dad were terrific parents in a lot of ways. Some ways not so much, but then nobody's perfect. Mm-hmm. But they taught us to appreciate nature. They taught us to look around us and observe and figure out how things work and what they were. So all of that went into being favorite childhood memories. I mentioned Ann and Ella, my mother's aunts. When we were about 5 years old, we moved in with them for a short time, and they taught me how to read. And boy, that's been a habit over the years.
You're definitely an avid reader.
And it spread to my kids, you know? So that's been great.
I can see from your childhood memories that how you've passed that on to us, to your children. I remember one of my favorite things growing up is when we would get in the car on Sunday after church and we all got to pick directions to go. So we just get in the car, and there were 7 kids. So you get in the car and you're like, okay, this one's, you know, the first person gets to say which way, and they pick right, the next one picks left and right, and we never ever knew where we were gonna end up. And now I know where that came from, which I never knew that before. I thought my dad came up with that. Now I know he was taught that. And it's funny to see generation after generation the things you pass on. And the love of nature, I definitely have that. So that's definitely from this DNA right here and passed on. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, next question. What do you remember most about your parents, and what was most important to them?
I remember a lot of things, again, about my parents. I had a little sister who died when I was 4, and we lived in Burley, Idaho at the time. And Mom was grieving so hard over the loss of that daughter. And Dad actually quit his job, without consulting Mom or anything, quit his job and made arrangements for us to move in with her aunts in Utah. Well, he found something else to do there, and we would eventually, that's where I grew up actually, is in Providence. So,
Utah.
in
And
Utah.
bought a house a block away.
Yeah.
The great aunts.
But Dad was always very caring, just took care of people. Nothing overt, nothing you'd look at and say, now he really takes care of people. But he did. And it was a subtle way.
Do you think that's why you're like that? Did you learn that from your dad?
I hope I can emulate him in that. My mother would try to direct us on how things should go in our lives. And sometimes it worked out, and sometimes that was, okay, she said to do that, so I'm gonna do this. But I definitely learned a lot from my parents. I learned to, didn't appreciate it at the time, but I learned to work from them. You know, I remember the hottest days of the summer. Mother would be in canning peaches or whatever crop was on. You know, and that kitchen would be boiling. It was 110 degrees outside, and the kitchen would be 130. And so it was just pouring off of her, and yet she was doing all this canning for us. So, and a couple of times we would set on a task to do together, and I could never keep up with my mother. I really couldn't. So, and Dad was always at work. You know, he worked really hard, very, just a dynamic kind of person that way.
Strong work ethic,
Yeah.
like both of you have had, and you taught us children to have, definitely to be important. So if you could say one thing to your parents, what would it be? And they both have passed now, so what would it be if you had one chance to say anything that you wanted?
Sometimes I think I'd like to apologize for some of the things that I put them through.
I think most
Definitely
kids.
like to thank them. And it wouldn't just be my parents. It would be the two aunts that I've already talked about. My grandmother taught me more about love than you could ever learn anywhere from
Which
a
grandmother?
textbook. My grandmother Hutch's mom's mother.
He only had
I-
one that lived past about, when he was about 12. The rest
Oh,
Yeah.
passed
okay.
away.
I
And
didn't
two
know
of them
that.
had passed away when
Yeah,
he was just a baby.
My grandfather on my father's side passed away when I think I was maybe 3 or 4 months old is all. I have one small memory of my grandmother Anderson. And so, you know, they really didn't play a part in my life other than what they had taught my father. But, yeah, my Hutchison grandparents I dearly loved and appreciated.
And your family took care of your dad, didn't they? Your grandfather?
My grandfather, yeah. My grandfather got cancer when he was 70. And at the time I was, I think, 10 or 11. And the interesting about my grandfather, at least for me, is he was a farmer. That's all he ever knew. He could have been almost anything based on what I've learned about him since. He could have been a musician. He could have been a teacher, but he chose to be a farmer and a rancher. But when we went out to pick him up, here he had this cancer. We knew he had it. We knew he was sick with it. And we were going to take him to live in our house where we could take care of him. And we picked him up, and he was working for somebody else building a fence. And that fence was just as straight and as perfect as anybody could make it. About 30 years later, I happened to drive by that fence. That fence was still standing, and it was still just as straight and just as beautiful as when he put it in. Wow.
Wow, that's awesome. So So as you can see, my dad has no problem with crying, which is actually one of the things that I truly admire about him, is that he has never cared if you see him cry. It's not, it doesn't mean that he's less of a man or anything else. His heart is always on his sleeve. Who did you learn that from, or where did you get that?
I don't know where that came from.
Your grandpa wasn't like that? I never remember seeing grandpa cry.
I don't remember my dad doing it. I don't remember. I just don't remember anybody else doing it, but I just know I can't control it.
And I'm glad you can't. I think it's a great example. And I see in society that things are kind of turning that way, where we're teaching our sons in this generation that's coming out now that it's okay to be whoever you are. It's okay if you cry. It's okay if you say I'm scared. Where I think at past generations, a lot of them, not everyone, was like, no, you have to be strong. You know, it was different now. So
Well,
I think my dad led that. Actually, he's the one that people saw him crying and they're like, oh, we should teach our men to do that.
Yeah, well, you can cry over feelings, but you don't cry over a hurt toe.
Yeah,
You know?
yeah, too tough for that. Like when you broke your back on the sled,
The
not the
sled.
sled, yeah, on the sled in Tahoe. Yep. We called him the Ninja Turtle because he had that little back brace on, and that was 30 years ago, 20 years ago.
28 years ago.
Oh, that's close.
29.
Try 38.
No.
36.
No,
It was
no.
in- No, 92. Never mind.
Yeah, I'm like, wait,
Never mind, I
I'm
can't
not
believe-
that old.
I can't do my math today. Yeah, I used up all my math quotient helping our grandson. Yeah, it was 26 years ago.
26 years
It was
ago.
a senior Ryan and Carol were born.
Oh, okay.
That's how I
Yeah.
do it.
So that's two of their grandkids were born. So my next question was, I didn't know what my dad was going to be wearing today when he shows up. Usually it's some sort of fashion statement that I would love to take a picture of. If I had I could probably make a whole website of what not to wear based on my dad, right? So I figured he was going to wear a cowboy hat, and he decided not to wear it for the video. And so he was born and raised in Utah.
Well, and so you got this cowboy, you gotta have a belt with a nice buckle on it.
Yeah, and he's got, what's on that, two elk
Two
fighting?
elk fighting.
Yep. And where'd you get that?
I got it up in Yellowstone, of
I was
course.
going to say that's like a Yellowstone, which is our favorite place to go together. Yeah, and of course you have the cowboy hat with the flowers on it to go with the Hawaiian shirt here.
And all of his pins from the places he's traveled.
Yep. With his shorts, and Dad, pick your foot up, please. With his shorts, with his tan socks, and he has a leg brace on, so he has to wear his sandals with it. So he always is the epitome of fashion. One of my favorite memories is when I was a teenager, and you know how teenagers are, especially girls.
And he would have to have cowboy boots on if he hadn't had the leg brace.
Yes,
but
so he
can't.
would be having cowboy boots on, but the leg brace prevents that now. So as a teenager, I remember going to the beach in California, right? This is where we lived. And my dad went to me and he reached out to me and he said, you want to go for a walk on the beach? He is wearing his swim trunks and his cowboy boots. And I was like, no, I don't. I actually don't want to be seen with you. But I think I went. I usually did go because Dad has the best stories. Like going on a road trip with him is the best. He knows so much about the U.S. and things that have happened and different stories and history. And so you just get in the car and you want to be in the front seat next to him because he's going to tell you, like, this mountain over here was this, and here's the story with this over here and that building over here. And it's just, it's like having a history teacher in the driver's seat teaching you along the way. And one of the things that you said earlier about nature and your dad is saying, he would say, look up. He always would tell us, look up, look up. You're going to miss it. You're going to miss it. Look up around this corner. Okay, in the next few miles, look up. Right? Stop
Yeah.
fighting. We'll be there when we get there. Look up. Especially with 7 kids in a station wagon, traveling, because we ended up living in New York for a while.
10 years?
Oh, yeah, so we didn't have 7 kids at the time. You guys
Just
had
5.
Okay, 5 kids. So traveling from New York to Utah to visit our grandparents in the station wagon, driving across the country. Can you imagine? I would be insane. I don't know how you guys did
We
that.
were insane or we wouldn't have tried it.
That is true. That is true. Okay, So how did you two meet each other?
Well, actually, we met each other several times. So I'll tell you my memory of it.
Mm-hmm.
The very first time?
Yeah.
Okay.
I had been to the Chicago 4-H Congress. It's a national convention of 4-Hers, and you win a trip to go there. You actually earn a trip. It's not something that you say, okay, I'm going to go do that, and you do it. You have to earn it.
The state picks one
yeah.
for each category.
And I went in electricity. Her brother Jerry went in dairy, and so that's where I met Jerry. And after we got home, we got together a time or two for different things, and he had an old black Buick that had belonged to his grandmother, and he was putting wanted to put a speaker in the back of that car, and so I went over to help him wire it. And we got it in, and then we went into his house to rest. And as we're sitting there, this tall girl walks in. She's got her hair in braid down her back, and she's pretty good looking, little Danish girl. And Jerry started giving her a hard time. And I thought, Jerry, she's a good looking girl. What are you giving her a hard time about? Well, it turned out to be my wife eventually. We met a couple other times too, and she'll tell you about a couple of those times, I think.
I don't know. Why not?
Well, whatever.
So you met because your friend had a sister.
Yep.
Yeah.
At the time, you were what, 18?
Yeah. 18 or 19. Let's see, it was 61 when I went there, so it was probably 62. So I would have been 19 or going on 19 at the time.
So 18 still.
Yeah. And she's 5 years younger than me. So, yeah, she was this little kid.
But I wasn't built like a little kid.
No, not at all.
I got my height when I was 11.
Wow. And you're 5'7"? 5'8"?
5'7". I was this tall at that, and I was already hourglass shaped.
So when did you know she was the one?
There's an old saying, you feel somebody walking on your grave.
Mm-hmm.
I think I felt that a couple of times with her, and I thought, no, wait a minute. And I kind of shied away from her a few times, but then she finally threw a loop and got me.
And then you just couldn't resist, huh?
Nope, couldn't.
How long have you two been married?
51 years.
Wow, impressed that he remembered that.
And we started dating.
Well, it was pretty easy. 50 was last year, and it's been a year since then.
so once you hit 50, it's easy for the man to remember.
And we started dating in February 10th, 52 years ago.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yep.
I couldn't have told you the date, but I could tell you it was in February.
And so why did you choose Mom's birthday to get married?
So I could remember it.
No.
Actually, we were going to get married afterwards, and then some things came
A
up.
week later, we were
Yeah.
supposed to get married.
Yeah, we were going to get married on April 29th. I don't know why we picked that date either, for sure. But some things came up with my parents, my mother especially, and we just said, okay, we're either going to have to elope or we get married. And we got married up at her folks' house on kind of a spur of the moment thing.
You got married at Grandma and Grandpa's house?
Yeah.
I didn't know where you got married.
Yeah.
Oh.
We already sent out some of the invitations, and so
We
we had
had
the
her,
reception and everything the week that we were originally going to be married.
Huh. Interesting. Next question. What helped you through the hardest times of your life?
her.
Yeah.
Between her, sometimes the church, sometimes just reflecting back on some of my ancestors, some of the things they went through. But when you realize that some of the things they went through, what you're going through is nothing, it helps a lot.
It's true. Perspective, right?
Yeah.
That's a good lesson. So what event or events do you feel shaped you most in your life?
That's the one question I never could come up with an answer for. I think that just reading things and trying to figure out who I am, what I'm going to do with my life, and I still kind of wonder that sometimes. What am I going to do with my life? You know. Then I realized, oh, I'm 75. How much time do I have left? I don't know, but we'll find out.
Yeah.
But I can't really pin down a particular event. I'm just who I am, and I do what I want to.
Nice. So that part right there where you said you don't know how much time you have left, is that something that you think a lot about as you get older, or does it just kind of come and go sometimes?
It comes and goes. Heck, there are times when I'm still 30 in my mind.
I agree. Me too.
Then the body says, I don't think so.
Yep.
Yep. So what's made you such a great storyteller? Just to give a little backstory here, I could tell you that all the kids and the grandkids, one of our favorite things is when we're hanging out with Dad and we're on vacation, his dad would always tell us stories. I mean, as kids, he would come into our bedrooms and tell us stories, or we would sit before we went to bed. But the grandkids, when we're on vacation, they're like, tell us Rough and Puff, tell us, and he's got these like signature stories, but he's never written a book or anything. So what made you such a great storyteller?
I don't know that I'm great.
You are.
But my grandmother Hutchison always told stories. And they always had a moral to them. Mine don't always have a moral. They're just, things that happen, things that go on. Sometimes there's a moral to them, but I think that it stems from her. That and my Aunt Ella, we always talked about, or that we already talked about. She was not only my mother's aunt, and she and her sister not only taught me to read, but she was my 4th grade teacher. And she inspired the whole class. Every class she taught, she inspired. She would read these very difficult stories and tell them, and just inspire us in different ways. When I graduated from high school, I remember there was a bunch of us boys who were standing around talking, and one of them said, well, what teacher in all the years and these were kids that I'd grown up with and stuff, all the way through high school, what teacher did we have that you think was the very best? Without hesitation, I knew what I thought, but I didn't want to say it. And every one of them said, yeah, Mrs. Nettle. Miss Nettle was the very best teacher we could have had.
Yeah. That's awesome. Oh. So what scared you the most in your life?
I think just in the past couple of years when they told me how close I'd come to dying from my heart.
He just had a triple bypass. What was the date?
September 2016.
September 2016.
And even after they did the bypass, 3 days later, and I have no memory of this.
His whole body shut down. It quit processing. He took on 8 pounds of fluid overnight because he wasn't releasing anything.
I remember that.
And all of his numbers just went crazy. Nurses were flying like crazy. Doctors was in fast and doing it, and they ushered us all out of intensive care.
And you don't remember that?
I do not.
That's probably a good thing.
Yeah. It's just afterwards when he told me that, oh, really. Although I will say, as I'm laying there more than once, when you're on opioids and whatever other pain relievers they've given you, and you're kind of hallucinating. More than once I was a Mayan sacrifice.
Really?
Yeah.
That's funny. Did anybody ever yell at you, don't go to the light? Was Mom like, don't go to the light?
No.
You're staying here, Anderson. I could see her doing that.
No, but after a couple of times of that, I told them, I don't want any more of those painkillers.
I don't want to be sacrificed.
Or let's do Tylenol or something. I was fine with it after that, but
Yeah. Oh. So what's made you the happiest in your life?
being married,
Mm-hmm.
just doing the things that we've done. Back when we were rich and had a motor home and could afford to take the grandkids everywhere, I was perfectly happy taking them, all the way back to Illinois and Wyoming, and following, the wagon train tracks and stuff, going up to
Mount Rushmore.
Mount Rushmore, and of course going to Yellowstone 3 or 4 times with them.
Mm-hmm.
Every trip.
Yeah.
Every trip should include Yellowstone, if you ask me. Ask them. Every trip has to, or should.
Beginner end, it doesn't matter.
That's the start or the end of every trip. It'd be Yellowstone. Many times I've started out to go somewhere else, and I ended up in Yellowstone, and somehow never make it where I originally intended.
Like we went on, he always would plan these amazing trips. The trip was called,
Fire and Ice.
Yep, Fire and Ice. It was, it must have been the end of June.
Yeah.
2005, because I had just had my youngest son.
He was 10 days old.
He was 10 days old, and they had asked me before, do you want to go on this trip with the motorhome and all the grandkids, and we're going to go up Oregon and Washington, and we're going to see volcanoes and waterfalls, and I said, well, I'm just going to be having a baby, I don't know how I'm going to feel, but it was baby number 4, so it makes it a little easier. We start going up, and it's raining, and then we set up the campfire second night, third night,
Probably the fourth night.
fourth night, we're sitting at the campfire, and I was like, could we just go to Yellowstone? And he said, I don't know how we're gonna make that happen. And I was like, we go. And he's like, I think we can figure out how to make it happen. So we went to Yellowstone, and I was the happiest new mom in a motorhome with how many grandkids?
9.
9 grandkids, and seriously, so happy. Because we would sit in the motorhome in Yellowstone. Like, one of my favorite things we do in Yellowstone when we had the motorhome was we would leave the campsite, we would drive out to Hayden Valley, and then we would stop and make breakfast while we were looking out the window and eating our breakfast, and then buffalo would just be all over the hills. Yeah, and then sometimes we would laugh at some of the tourists who decided they should get between our motorhome and the buffalo, and there was no way that they could have run fast enough if that buffalo decided to charge. So we're like, we might even get entertainment with this breakfast. There are so many great memories in Yellowstone for us. I think.
And the grandkids always called it breakfast with the buffalo.
Breakfast with the buffaloes. Yeah, I think that any time in my entire life from here on out, if I went to Yellowstone without my parents, which isn't really allowed, I don't think. I don't want that. I don't think they want that either. That I will always think that I'm supposed to go on these trips to Yellowstone with my parents.
I would hope that you would go and do those things even after we're gone.
Yep.
I mean, my folks took me to Yellowstone, and I still enjoy going today. Of course, back when I went with my parents, you could feed the bears, and there were bears all over along the roadside. That was the thing you saw, more than buffalo. You saw the bears. And so that was a great thing to do.
Tell us about what was your dad's favorite thing that happened to his car with the bears?
Oh. Well, we were up at Yellowstone one time with my mother's sister and her family, and they had a reasonably new car, and so did we. But my uncle was throwing a fit. Bears had got,
It's not, Mom. It's a kid's toy.
Oh.
So I have my grandson's toys over here, and one of them, I told my daughter the other day, I go, I don't know what toy that is, but it goes off out of the blue for no reason, and it just
funny.
did. So I guess it's supposed to remind us that, you know, we love our grandkids or something.
something. Anyway, my uncle threw a fit about bears got up on his car and they scratched his new car. Dad looked at it and says, I'm very proud of the scratches on my car.
He's like, I'm going back for more.
Yep.
So 7 kids. You know what? One of the questions I didn't tell you I was going to ask you, but here it comes.
Mhm.
Why 7 kids?
We found 6 ways.
6 methods of birth control. It did not work.
So the goal was never 6 kids. It just
Nope.
We never said when we got married, let's have 6 kids.
okay.
We had the first 3, and I said, no more.
Oh, after you had me, I'm the 3rd one. They were like,
no
that's
more,
it.
That's all I could handle. And then when you were 4, so I went, yeah, if you want another one, I'm okay with it. And 3 got along so well together when you were little that I thought 3's a nice group,
And we're all 2 years apart.
except the next group.
Yeah, except the next group, there's 4 years.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And then we got the 7th because our last pregnancy gave us 2.
And how long before they were born until you figured out you're having twins?
3 hours.
Yeah.
We found out there was twins 3 hours before they were born at 7 months.
I think that's the part that scared me the most.
What
Oh,
scared
why?
you most?
We're gonna have
The
twins?
twins.
Wait a minute.
He passed out.
He's like, I did not sign up for that. I can't imagine. I cannot imagine, like, I'm going to the hospital with him having emergency C-section and they're going to take out twins and you didn't know because they didn't do ultrasounds.
Only, and I've had ultrasounds with you and Laurel because I have extremely large babies because I'm diabetic during pregnancies.
Right.
And,
And
so
after.
Shauna was a 10-10 baby and her little sister came in at 10-4, where the ones that had been born at 8 months were only 7-13 and 8-9.
Yeah, big babies.
And so they had tested because I was getting so big to make sure there wasn't twins. And no, just big babies.
So when you were pregnant, actually with twins, they didn't think anything of it because you had big babies.
Yeah.
And they were 7 months.
Mm-hmm.
And how much do they weigh?
4'10" and 5'9".
Which is big for preemies.
Big for preemies, but they had all the signs of a real preemie because their skin was so thin that you could see their eyes through their eyelids when their eyes were closed. They looked like baby birds.
Oh my goodness, yeah.
And they were 18, either 17 and 18 inches long or 18 and 19. There was 1 inch difference in their leg.
And they look completely different.
Oh yes, all of my children, the first 5 were blonde, blue-eyed, very fair-skinned. The second twin, they took the girl first because she was in danger. We were hemorrhaging. And he is blonde, blue-eyed, matched all the rest of my children, Danish down to the... And the daughter came out with dark auburn hair, light olive skin, and green eyes. She took after my mother.
My mom used to always say, thank goodness they were twins or somebody would think I had an affair.
She did not look like the rest of my children.
No, not at all. Oh, Dad, what are the 3 things you wanted to make sure you taught your kids?
There's a lot of things that I would like to have taught them. Some things maybe took and some things I'm not so sure took, but have an unconditional love for each other, for the people around you. I think that's very important. Work hard. Don't expect life to just hand you everything. It ain't gonna happen. And the third thing, well, have a better memory, because right now I don't remember.
I think one thing that you didn't add is family first. I feel like
Yes.
that was definitely something that was drilled into us, not in a mean way. It was just like always shown us by example. Family first, family first, family first.
Yeah.
Definitely. So with that said, what do you think the world needs more of right now?
I think we just need more love and tolerance.
Mm-hmm.
And less tweeting.
And less tweeting? That's fun. What were the 3 best decisions you've ever made? Besides having me as your daughter.
I didn't know there was much decision in that. Marrying her. Probably this is kind of strange, but switching my major in college from engineering to accounting.
I didn't know you were going to school to be an engineer.
I'd gone through a little over 2 years of college, and I had to take a business class.
In engineering.
So I took, beginning accounting class that had all these accountant majors in and stuff. I got the highest score in the class.
Nice.
The professor called me and he says, well, I can't find you in our roles. Who is your advisor? And I said, well, you won't find me in your college roles because I'm in engineering. He says, well, why don't you consider switching?
You're like, okay.
And I thought about it, I could be just an average, mediocre, run-of-the-mill engineer. Or obviously, I can be a pretty good accountant. So that's where I ended up at.
So
Which made it, instead of him graduating in
4 years.
4 years, counting as a 3-year thing once you started. There's no way to cut it in less than 3 years.
Oh.
So he had to go 5 years because he had lots of credits, just...
Right, not the right ones.
Yeah.
Nice. And so my dad was an accountant. My mom ended up being an accountant. When I first started, I did accounting. In my career, I did accounting. And then
All of you girls have done accounting.
Yeah. My sister does accounting, and she owns her own business as accounting. So and then I found marketing, and I always say like the heavens opened and the angels started singing, and I was like, oh my gosh, I love what I do now. So accounting's cool, but you don't get to talk to people, you don't get to be creative. It's all numbers driven. It's not a lot of personality. So to me, I was just like, yes. But I had some great example about why you should go into accounting, and so went into accounting.
Well, and to go along with that, there's computers. I was also a computer programmer.
That he took after he graduated.
Millions of years ago in computing years, I learned BASIC, I learned Fortran, I learned COBOL, and a couple other languages.
He started doing computer programming when you had key punch cards.
I don't even know what that means.
It's a card about this big. And it has little holes in it, and they would take these boxes and take them over the big mainframe computer that doesn't have the capacity that your laptop has. That's the size of this whole 2 rooms here.
Wow.
And they fed them in there. You put them in these trays, and they fed them in, and it ran all the programs. And it got all the data.
The program and the data on these entered on these cards.
The first part was the program, and the next group was the...
They were called holorith cards for the guy that invented them. And there was 80 columns on that card. And by where the punches were, the machine could sense where these punches were and then read it in.
So that makes me think of everything that you've seen invented in your lifetime. What was one that just blew your mind, or you thought that's a game changer?
Well, the personal computer I could see was going to be a game changer. That's why we got one before IBM had one.
Do you remember Dad teaching you how to program at the games?
I remember we had the little TI, wasn't it a TI?
Yeah,
and we played, what was that game that was like shoot the thing up?
I don't remember.
Across the street, Astro Blaster or something.
Something like that.
Yeah, I remember like that was just so cool.
Yeah.
And he taught you how to bounce it, and make the ball bounce in it.
Yeah.
All kinds of things we could
And
do with that.
instead of a hard drive, it went to a little cassette tape is where the programming was on it.
Oh wow, I
We
didn't know that.
programmed on that thing and then downloaded onto that, and then you could play the games.
Was that DOS? Or
It was long before
was that
DOS.
pre-DOS?
Yeah.
Wow.
Our first DOS computer was when I finally got it. Well, actually, I got it at work. We had made up a reason to have a personal computer to be shared by my department. You know, there was like 5 or 6 of us.
Where did you work?
General Electric for 40 years.
Yep. Started there and retired there, right?
Yep.
From one side of the country to the other.
Yep.
And made some good friends there. Definitely have a good pension from there.
Thank you, GE, for that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember the GE store we had there. I mean, that was one of my favorite memories is when we went to the GE store and we got to go pick something out. So I don't know if you got credits for being an employee there. Like, I just know as a kid, it was like, oh my gosh, look at this cool stuff.
Well, you had to pay for it, but of course it was basically wholesale prices. And the only people that could get in there was GE employees and their families.
Oh, okay.
That was in Schenectady.
And they
New
had
York.
one in San Jose too.
Oh, that's right. I forgot about that one.
I think that's where I bought the TI from.
I think that's where you bought the TI. I remember going there and picking that up that day.
Yeah.
It's funny the memories that you keep and the ones that you don't.
Yeah, it is. But I had a good working career.
Mm-hmm. You did. So what are you most proud of?
I read that question, I thought, what am I most proud of? I mean, obviously my family, you know, all that, and I am proud of that. And then I remembered one instance in work. We had spent several months, probably a year or so, coming up with a new financial system, whole system for our department here in San Jose. And as we were, I was on the team that did it, and there was like,
The programming.
yeah, we did the programming and the development, the testing and all this stuff, and I was kind of the advisor to say, well, that works for accounting or for this part of accounting, but it doesn't work for this part. And so I had to be aware of everything that went on in the accounting world, payroll and everything else. And so we ended up with a pretty good, I thought a pretty good product. And as we're presenting it to the other 50 or so accountants in kind of an informal meeting, you're welcome to ask questions as we go along and stuff. And one girl said, let Dennis explain it. We trust him. We know he's honest.
Oh. I think anybody who knows you and has met you will say that about you. That's something that I think that you've led through your life, and you've shown us through being a role model, how important it is to have integrity, honesty, helping others. One thing that you've done, which is great, and I've struggled with on the opposite side of it, is you always put other people first, which is awesome, but then you forget about yourself, and then sometimes you're like, wait, I have no self-care, I'm putting everybody else first, and I need to do some things to rejuvenate myself. But it's always so important to make sure you're there for other people.
That's because she's right there with me, pushing me in that direction.
Yeah.
Well, I think we ought to do this, Dennis. Oh, yeah, I guess we could do that.
Okay, so if you could go back to one time in your life, when would it be?
I've thought about that several times. In fact, I was asked that a few years ago by my brother-in-law and sister-in-law, and
Which one?
Milt and Shauna.
Okay.
And my answer then, the same I'm going to give now. At the time I was 66 or 67, retired, able to do what I wanted.
And so I had good health.
And I still had good health, because it was shortly after that I lost that tendon. Things
The
kind of
reason
went downhill.
the cowboy boots are off your plate now.
Yep. But
I said,
Yeah.
thank God.
about 66 or 67, when you're retired, you got not a whole lot of money, but you got enough that you can get by on, and you have the time to do what you want to. And health to do it. The health is really important. I mean, we bought a fifth wheel trailer a few years ago, and we have yet to take it out any place because there's been one surgery after another between my eyes and my
They take
heart.
turns. My mom had a bum knee last year, the year before, and I was talking to her, and I was like, "Have surgery?" She's like, "Well, I need to wait till he gets his eyes fixed, and then I can go get my knee done." I was just
And then
like,
he had his heart surgery
Yeah, then
when
he
I was
had-
supposed to have it done.
Then he had his triple bypass because he's like, no, you don't get to go yet. It's just funny. So they're like scheduling their life around who gets the next surgery.
Hey, doctors are our social life anymore, you know?
That and helping its seniors.
Yeah, they help us seniors, and it's really funny when you call and you have conversations with them because a lot of the conversation is about their latest health problems. It's so much of your life, right? So yeah. So what I'm learning from that is do everything that you want to when you're younger because you don't know when your health is going to start changing things for you, so you can't do what you want. So what advice would you give your younger self?
I think you summed it up very well. Do the things you can. You know, be yourself, but be your best self. And don't always worry about what the world is doing or saying. I know that that's pretty hard to say, or pretty hard to do, but you can't always worry about the world. I guess that would be about it.
So what's the best and worst part of getting older?
You know, the best part is watching your kids and your grandkids, and well, hopefully they've all made a success out of their lives and none of them have messed up so badly. In fact, when you compare them to some other people, you say, "Oh, my family's not that bad. We're pretty darn now." But the worst part is when you had some very good friends in high school and college and even later on, and you're reduced to reading the obituary and you realize, I haven't been in contact with them for all these years and now there's no chance that I will be.
How does it feel when you lose somebody that you knew so well in your life? And that's not like a mother, a grandmother, people that you expect that are gonna pass on before you. Is it the same to you? Do you feel like the same kind of grieving or the same kind of shock, or is it different?
If it's, well, I'll bring up one example. There was I'll call him a kid, my age, in high school, and he and I were very good friends. And I saw him again at our high school reunion about 5 years ago. You know, we got reacquainted.
Their 50th class reunion.
Yeah.
Nice.
And about a month ago, his obituary was in the paper. But when I'd seen him at our 50th, he acted and seemed to be younger than me.
Wow. So you did not expect him to go
Didn't
first.
expect him at all to have gone.
Does it make you pause and think about life, or?
Yeah. But it makes me appreciate the fact that I firmly believe there's a lot more to this life, or to life, than just this part of life. That there's something beyond.
When you pass?
Yeah. That I will be reunited with my parents, my grandparents, the other people who have meant so much to me over the years. For that matter, my in-laws were a good part of my life. And I respected and admired them too.
So what do you want to be remembered for?
I had an answer for that, and now I'm trying to remember it. I think for being honest, I think for having taught my children, my grandchildren, about the world around us. And I think for, well, maybe even my sense of humor, although it's kind of off the wall sometimes, but
Oh, yeah.
We always say my dad's sense of humor is best at midnight. When you're like really exhausted and everything makes you laugh, like that's when he's best. Okay, so this is totally transparent. He doesn't even know I'm saying this right now. So we went to a funeral. See, he knows. Okay, we went to the funeral. It was one of our family members that had passed unexpectedly. It's a really hard time for everybody, and when it's a really hard time, that's when this humor gets even worse, because I think that's the way he deals with it and tries to help us deal with it, is like, it's getting too sad, so let's pick this up. So it was an open casket.
And it was while family was just in there.
Yeah, so it was just families in the room, open casket, and she was not our direct blood. She had married into the family. So he said, "So what do you think about tying a string to her arm?" And as people were walking by the casket, she starts waving to him. We started busting up, and we couldn't stop, and we're like, "This is terrible!" Like, her family is sitting over there crying, and we had been crying, and now we're laughing. We're like, "Oh my gosh, Dad, stop it! Stop it!" And then you just have this vision in your head, like how these people would be so freaked out. All of a sudden, she's like, "Boo!" Yeah. So this is my dad's humor, which I have to say, I got it, I appreciate it, and he makes me laugh all the time. So, is there anything else you want to leave us with?
I think I've left you with way, way too much now.
I know, I really appreciate it. And you know what I didn't expect is I learned a lot through this that I didn't know. I thought I would know most of how you would answer a lot of these things, and there was definitely a lot of things that I didn't know. I didn't think he would make me cry during it, but he did. So as children, of his 7 kids, we
And I didn't even have to step on your toes to do it.
You didn't have to be violent with me. Thank you for that, especially with that brace on. So my siblings and I always laugh, like, so at Father's Day, his birthday, Christmas, like, who's gonna give him the card or the gift that makes him cry? Right? And then sometimes one of us will hand it to him, and then it just starts, and we're like, "Yep, you did it, you did it." So thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate you being authentic and transparent, and your advice, and I hope you can see where I get a lot of my tendencies, good and bad, from now. Their fault. But I appreciate and would not want any other father, mother in my life than what I had. So I hope that you enjoyed this, and I appreciate having this memory for the rest of my life. I want to make a copy of this for my kids, my grandkids, and this will be captured for years to go, on and on. So
Share it with your siblings.
Oh yeah, I'm definitely going to share this with my siblings too.
Good, maybe it'll put some of them to shame.
Yeah. So thank you. I'd love to hear what you guys thought about it. If you had any other questions that you thought I should ask my parents, and think about asking your parents too, because I think that for me, this was definitely something that I'm going to remember for the rest of my life. And like what we talked about earlier, like, it's weird, some of the memories you keep and some you don't. Like, this will be one I remember sitting here today and talking to them and hearing these stories. And I just think it's amazing that you guys would sit here and do this. I know that, first of all, they're not these people who will sit on a video and talk. Like, I was not sure, are we going to do an audio recording? Are you even open to doing this? And they said they would. I was like, yay, I'm so excited. So thank you very much.